Picture yourself at 19 years old, standing in an open doorway 3,000 feet above the Vietnamese jungle. There are no doors, no seatbelt, just you, an M60 machine gun, and a bungee cord keeping you from falling into the green hell below. The rotor wash screams in your ears. Tracer rounds are climbing toward you like angry fireflies. And your only job? Lean out into that chaos and fire back. Between 1965 and 1973, more than 2,700 door gunners were killed in Vietnam, the highest casualty rate of any helicopter crew position. The turnover was so brutal that many units wouldn't learn a new gunner's name until they'd survived their first month. This is the story of how those men, barely out of high school, sparked a revolution in warfare that changed combat forever. When American commanders first deployed helicopters to Vietnam in the early 1960s, they operated under a dangerous assumption. Speed and altitude would be their armor. Fly fast, stay high, and the Viet Cong's small arms fire would be nothing more than an annoyance. The Bell UH-1 Iroquois, the Huey, was designed as an airborne truck. A pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief hauled infantry squads and supplies across rice paddies and elephant grass. The theory was elegant. Rapid insertion and extraction would revolutionize warfare, but theory collapsed the moment helicopters had to hover. When a Huey slowed to insert troops at a hot landing zone, it became a hovering target the size of a school bus. The distinctive wop-wop-wop of rotor blades announced its presence from miles away. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army quickly adapted, positioning .51 caliber machine guns and 23mm anti-aircraft weapons along likely flight paths. By 1965, the numbers told a brutal story. Between 1966 and 1971, the Army lost one helicopter for every 7.9 sorties. Of the nearly 12,000 helicopters deployed to Southeast Asia, more than 5,000 would be destroyed. Roughly 2,500 of those were Hueys. The math was simple and deadly. If you flew helicopters in Vietnam, you were probably going to get shot down. The first solution came from the field. Maintenance crews began removing cabin doors from Hueys and mounting M60 machine guns on bungee cords. The crew chief would lean out and fire freehand, trying to suppress enemy positions. It helped, but only covered one side. They added a fourth man to the crew, the shotgun rider, soon known as the door gunner. These weren't elite troops, they were volunteers. Some came from motor pools, others had been working mess halls. They raised their hands, trading base duty for a seat on the edge of a flying death trap. Specialist Gary Wetzel was one of them. On January 8, 1968, near Ap Dong An, a rocket-propelled grenade nearly severed his left arm. Wetzel wrapped the mangled stump with his shirt, climbed back onto the helicopter's skid, and kept firing his M60 with one arm until every man on board escaped. He survived and received the Medal of Honor. That's the caliber of men who became door gunners. Training happened fast, sometimes just days before combat missions. They learned the clock system for calling targets. Enemy fire at 3 o'clock meant starboard. They trained to fire from a moving platform at moving targets, compensating for wind, aircraft speed, and altitude. Door gunners carried around 2,000 rounds, roughly 17 belts. The M60 fired 500 to 650 rounds per minute. At full automatic, you'd burn through everything in under 4 minutes. There was no resupply mid-flight. Every burst had to count. Protection was minimal. Flak jackets stopped shrapnel, but not rifle rounds. Ceramic chest plates, chicken plates could stop a 7.62mm round, but weighed 20 pounds and restricted movement. Most gunners left them on the staging pad. Their real protection? A nylon monkey strap harness, and the hope they wouldn't get hit. And yes, sometimes men fell out. Sometimes harnesses failed. Some dangled while crews pulled them back. Others weren't so lucky. Veterans described the job as 90% boredom, 10% absolute terror. A typical day meant 8 to 12 hours flying, staring at jungle canopy, legs numb from standing, deafened by rotor wash, nauseated by exhaust fumes. In summer heat, temperatures inside helicopters exceeded 110 degrees. You'd scan constantly for movement. The Viet Cong were masters of camouflage, spider holes covered with vegetation, weapons hidden in rice bags, fighters dressed as farmers. From a fast-moving helicopter at altitude, distinguishing friend from foe was nearly impossible. That led to the war's unspoken tragedy: split-second decisions about when to fire. Was that movement enemy troops or civilians? That farmer in the rice paddy, Viet Cong or innocent? Children as young as 12 fought for the North. Without thermal imaging or advanced optics, gunners relied on instinct and gut feeling. Sometimes they got it wrong. The psychological burden of not knowing, of wondering if you'd killed an innocent person, haunted many door gunners forever. The most vulnerable moment was landing in hot LZs. You'd be 10 feet off the ground, hovering while troops jumped out. That's when the enemy opened up with everything. Your job: lay down a continuous wall of suppressive fire. The M60 bucking in your hands, hot brass flying past your face, incoming rounds punching through aluminum with sharp crack 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 sounds. Of nearly 5,000 helicopter crew members killed in Vietnam, the highest proportion were door gunners. The position had the highest casualty rate because it had the highest exposure, literally hanging out of the helicopter, exposed from 3 directions. Door gunners weren't enough. Losses continued mounting. Field units started modifying Hueys into improvised gunships. Maintenance crews worked overnight, welding weapon mounts and bolting rocket pods onto airframes never designed for combat. Early armed Hueys from the 11th Combat Aviation Battalion bristled with weapons: door-mounted M60s, M134 miniguns, firing 3,000 rounds per minute, M5 grenade launchers, firing 220 rounds per minute, and rocket pods carrying up to 38 Hydra 70mm rockets. The joke among crews: if it fits on a pylon, we'll shoot it. Some units even mounted French SS-11 wire-guided anti-tank missiles. These hogs, or frogs, flew ahead of transport slicks, lighting up landing zones and circling overhead during insertions. General Westmoreland called helicopters the most important tactical weapon introduced since the machine gun. But problems were impossible to ignore. Every weapon added weight. Fully armed Hueys had maybe 90 seconds of hover time before engines risked overheating. The wide body, 9 feet across, made easy targets. The Viet Cong learned to aim for the rotor mast. One hit there meant the helicopter fell like a stone. Between 1961 and 1975, roughly 7,000 Hueys served in Vietnam. Approximately 2,700 were destroyed, nearly 40%. Field commanders sent urgent requests. They needed something purpose-built for combat, not a transport with guns strapped on. Bell engineers made a bold decision: start fresh, but keep what worked. They retained the Huey's proven Lycoming T-53 engine, rotor system, and transmission. Everything else was stripped away. What emerged in September 1965 was revolutionary. The Model 209, its narrow fuselage looked like a flying knife. Tandem seating put the gunner in front, pilot behind and above, giving both excellent visibility while presenting a target profile less than half the Huey's width. By June 1967, it entered service as the AH-1G COBRA, the world's first dedicated attack helicopter. The COBRA delivered everything armed Hueys couldn't. Speed of 170 miles per hour, 20 faster than loaded Huey gunships. That meant reaching troops in contact minutes faster, and minutes determined who lived and died. Endurance, streamlined design reduced drag, making engines more efficient. Pilots could support multiple insertion waves without refueling. Firepower, a rotating nose turret mounted a 7.62mm minigun, 40mm grenade launcher, or both. It could traverse 230 degrees, engaging targets without maneuvering the entire aircraft. Stub wings carried 4 rocket pods, 38 Hydra 70 rockets total, each capable of penetrating 18 inches of concrete or creating lethal fragmentation across 50 feet. Protection came from design. Don't get hit. Light steel plating covered vital components. The narrow profile made it incredibly difficult to target, and both crew positions had full flight controls. If the pilot was hit, the gunner could fly them home. The first Cobras arrived at Bien Hoa Air Base on August 30, 1967. The 334th Assault Helicopter Company became operational on October 6. They scored their first kill September 4, sinking a Viet Cong sampan. Pilots called it Snake and loved it. After Huey's, the Cobra felt like trading a dump truck for a sports car. Unit logs showed noticeable drops in losses once Cobras led escort missions. Between 1967 and 1973, Bell built 1,116 Cobras. They logged over 1 million combat hours. Approximately 300 were lost, a significantly lower rate than Huey gunships. The Cobra enabled new tactics. The most effective and dangerous was the hunter-killer pink team. A Hughes OH-6A Cayuse, the Loach, flew treetop level, weaving through jungle below 30 miles per hour. Their job, be bait, draw enemy fire to reveal hidden positions, mark with smoke grenades, then escape. Meanwhile, a Cobra orbited at altitude, invisible from below. When the Loach made contact, the Cobra dove in with rockets and miniguns, obliterating the revealed position. The tactic was devastatingly effective but brutal. Of roughly 1,400 OH-6As built, nearly 1,000 were destroyed, over 70%, the highest loss rate of any U.S. aircraft in Vietnam. Loach crews knew they were flying death traps, but did it anyway, because the tactic saved infantry lives. Cobra pilots developed deep protective instincts. If a Loach went down, the Cobra stayed overhead until rescue arrived. No matter what, they'd fly with ammunition exhausted, using fake gun runs to suppress enemies and protect downed crews. On June 18, 1968, First Lieutenant Larry Taylor scrambled his Cobra near Apco Cong. A four-man reconnaissance patrol was surrounded by over 100 North Vietnamese soldiers. Standard extraction was impossible. For 45 minutes, Taylor and his wingman made attack runs, firing everything they had. Artillery flares provided brief light. Taylor's Cobra took multiple hits, but he kept firing. Then ammunition ran out. Both Cobras were dry. Fuel was critical. The enemy was still closing in. A medevac crew declared the patrol unsavable. Taylor refused to accept that. He reconned ground evacuation routes, all blocked. So he made a decision beyond training, beyond orders, beyond any reasonable expectation. Get to the clearing, I'm coming in. The problem, Cobras have 2 seats, no cargo space. Taylor didn't care. He instructed his wingman to expend final rounds on the eastern flank. Taylor fired his last minigun rounds west, opening a movement corridor. He switched on landing lights, deliberately drawing fire as the patrol ran. Then he landed under heavy fire. Climb on, skids, rocket pods, anywhere. 10 seconds, 4 men climbed onto the outside of his helicopter. 2 on skids, 2 on stub wings. Taylor lifted off overweight, fuel critical, enemy tracers following into darkness. He flew them to safety a kilometer away. All 4 survived. David Hill, one of those men, later said their chances without Taylor's actions were absolutely zero. Taylor was awarded the Silver Star. On September 5, 2023, 55 years later, President Biden upgraded it to the Medal of Honor. Taylor had flown 2,000-plus combat missions, took enemy fire 340 times, and never lost a man. When asked why he did it, Taylor's answer was simple. You do whatever you can to save the lives of the people you're trying to rescue. By early 1971, American ground troops were withdrawing. Operation Lomson 719 would test whether South Vietnamese forces could fight independently. The plan: drive through Laos, cut the Ho Chi Minh Trail, But congressional restrictions meant U.S. ground troops couldn't cross the border. Everything fell on helicopter crews. More than 600 aircraft deployed to Quezon, the largest helicopter operation of the war. When they lifted off February 8, 1971, pilots joked the sky looked invaded by angry bees. But the North Vietnamese were ready. They positioned ZPU-4 quad machine guns, 37mm radar-guided cannons, even SA-7 missiles. They held fire until helicopters were committed, then opened up with everything. On February 10, a Huey carrying 4 renowned war photographers, Larry Burroughs, Henry Hewitt, Ken Potter, and Kizaburo Shimomoto, was shot down. Everyone died. Their remains weren't recovered until 2008. Specialist Dennis Fuji's medevac Huey crashed at Landing Zone Ranger North on February 18. When another helicopter arrived for extraction, the 21-year-old from Hawaii refused to leave. The wounded needed him. For 4 days and 3 nights, Fuji treated soldiers, called in danger close airstrikes, organized defenses. He was awarded the Medal of Honor in 2022, 50 years later. The statistics from Lamson 719 are brutal. In 45 days, 108 helicopters destroyed, 600 plus damaged, and 176 crew members killed. 1 in 10 of all American helicopter crew deaths during the entire war happened during this single operation. March 3 saw the war's largest helicopter assault, 276 Hueys launching simultaneously. The formation was so tight, pilots smelled exhaust from aircraft ahead. They flew into withering fire. By mid-March, the mission shifted to desperate extraction. On March 19, Black Friday, more than 20 aircraft were lost in 1 day. COBRA pilots flew continuous missions, often making gun runs with empty weapons just to suppress enemies during evacuations. By March 25, it was over. The lessons were written in blood. They needed better sensors, self-sealing fuel tanks, heavier armor, more powerful weapons. Those needs would drive the Apache's development. When Vietnam ended in 1975, Army planners realized the COBRA wasn't enough for the next war. They weren't looking at jungles anymore. They were looking at Europe's Fulda Gap, where thousands of Soviet tanks might pour through. In 1972, the Advanced Attack Helicopter program launched. 2 companies competed, Bell's YA-63 and Hughes YA-64. Hughes focused on survivability. They armored the gearbox, surrounded crews in titanium bathtubs that could withstand 23mm cannon fire, and used a 4-blade rotor system that could take hits and keep flying. On September 30, 1975, the Hughes prototype flew. After extensive trials, the Army chose Hughes. It received a name that would define modern attack aviation, Apache. Engineers mounted a 30mm M230 chain gun under the nose, 625 rounds per minute, linked to the gunner's helmet. Wherever the gunner looked, the gun pointed. Stub wings carried up to 16 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, laser-guided weapons that could destroy tanks from over 3 miles away. The first production Apache delivered in January 1984. By April 1986, they deployed to West Germany's 11th Aviation Brigade, right on NATO's front lines. Combat came December 20, 1989, during Operation Just Cause in Panama. 12 Apaches struck fortified positions threatening the Panama Canal. They fired hellfires through windows from 4 miles in darkness. Not a single Apache was lost. 7 months later came Desert Storm. On January 17, 1991, 8 Apaches formed Task Force Normandy, flying 250 miles into Iraq, barely above the sand. At 2:38 a.m., they destroyed 2 radar stations in under 5 minutes, punching a hole in Iraq's air defenses for Allied aircraft. During the 100-hour ground war, 277 Apaches destroyed over 270 Iraqi tanks and 500-plus armored vehicles. Only 1 Apache was lost. Both crews survived. Readiness rates exceeded 90%, nearly unheard of in frontline combat. The Apache had proven itself as the dominant battlefield helicopter. The AH-64D Longbow Apache appeared in 1997 with dome-shaped radar above the rotor mast, detecting and tracking vehicles through dust storms or darkness. Later AH-64E Guardians added more powerful engines and fully digital cockpits, sharing targeting data across battlefields. But door gunners haven't disappeared, they've evolved. Modern UH-60 Blackhawks and CH-47 Chinooks still carry crew chiefs manning door guns. The weapons are more sophisticated. M240s, .50 calibers, minigun systems. The helicopters have better armor and sensors, but the fundamental job remains terrifyingly similar. You're still standing in an open door, still the most exposed crew member, still providing suppressive fire in hot landing zones. In Afghanistan and Iraq, door gunners faced the same basic challenges their Vietnam predecessors did. The difference is recognition. Modern door gunners receive specialized training, formal designations, and proper equipment. But make no mistake, it's still one of the most dangerous jobs in military aviation. Of approximately 100,000 helicopter pilots and crew members who served in Vietnam, close to 5,000 lost their lives. Among them, more than 2,700 were door gunners. Their names are etched on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., panel after panel of door gunners, crew chiefs, pilots, young men, most barely 20, who died in crashes from enemy fire or trying to save others. Gary Wetzel survived, though he lost his arm. Dennis Fuji survived and received the Medal of Honor decades later. Larry Taylor made it home and finally received the Medal of Honor in 2023. But for every Medal of Honor recipient, hundreds of door gunners did their jobs with equal courage and never received recognition beyond their unit's memory. The psychological cost was immense. PTSD rates among Vietnam helicopter crews were significantly higher than ground troops. The constant exposure to death, the inability to escape, the knowledge that any mission could be your last, it broke something inside many of these men. Some came home and threw themselves into civilian life, trying to forget. Others struggled with addiction, depression, survivor's guilt. Many asked the same haunting question: why did I make it when so many others didn't? The Vietnam Helicopter Pilot and Crew Member Monument, dedicated at Arlington National Cemetery on April 18, 2018, honors the nearly 5,000 who died. Its inscription is simple but powerful. In memory of the helicopter pilots and crew members who gave their lives in service to their country during the Vietnam War. The door gunners of Vietnam didn't just fight a war. They fundamentally changed how modern militaries think about air assault operations. Before Vietnam, helicopters were primarily for medevac and light transport. The door gunner position emerged from necessity, but sparked innovations that reshaped warfare. Suppressive fire from aircraft during landing is now standard worldwide. Hunter-killer tactics evolved into modern armed reconnaissance. Armed escort doctrine became fundamental. You don't send unarmed helicopters into combat without attack helicopter escorts. Every modern attack helicopter, every Apache, Viper, K-52, Tiger, traces its lineage to those door gunners hanging out of Hueys. Every doctrine on helicopter assault operations references lessons learned in their blood. John Masaki, a door gunner with the 240th Assault Helicopter Company, flew 11 months and 29 days in Vietnam. Decades later, he described what it was like. You'd be flying along and suddenly the whole world would explode. Tracers coming up, your gun firing, the pilot yelling directions, the helicopter shaking from impacts. And through all of that, you had to stay focused, had to keep firing, because lives depended on it. These men, most 19 or 20 years old, stepped up when called. Many didn't believe in the war. Many questioned why they were there. But they believed in each other. They believed in protecting troops on the ground. They believed in bringing their brothers home. The door gunner position started as a desperate improvisation. a crew chief with a bungee-corded machine gun. From that crude beginning emerged a tactical revolution that fundamentally changed warfare. Stand at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and run your fingers over those names. Door gunner after door gunner after door gunner. Each one represents a family destroyed, a future erased, potential unfulfilled, but their legacy lives on. In every modern helicopter operation, in every doctrine taught to new pilots, in every life saved by lessons learned in their sacrifice. The next time you see footage of helicopters providing close air support, remember where it started. Remember the door gunners of Vietnam, teenagers hanging out of doorless Hueys with nothing but a machine gun, courage, and an absolute refusal to let their brothers down. They had the deadliest job in the sky. They knew it. They did it anyway. If this story moved you, hit that like button so more people can discover these tales of sacrifice and innovation. Tell me in the comments, did you know anyone who served as a door gunner in Vietnam? Do you have a family story about helicopter crews in this war? I'd be honored to hear it. Subscribe for more stories of human courage in the face of impossible odds. These histories matter, these people matter, and as long as we keep telling their stories, they'll never be forgotten. Until next time, remember the fallen and honor the living.